Okay, so when I first heard that there was going to be a film called 42, I thought to myself, like a lot of people might, oh, so it's got something to do with Hitchhiker's Guide? Of course not. That would be silly. So what I actually found out was that, like many people found out, it's about Jackie Robinson, one of the first African American players, as well as one of the more successful players uh, in baseball at that time. You know, it wasn't just that he was uh, doing this where before they had to have a separate league and everything. No, it was that he was actually, pretty good baseball player, to say the least. And so I wanted to find out a little bit more about the film, and it turns out that they have the lead actor, the lead character, uh, being played by Chadwick Boseman. Now, who is Chadwick Boseman? Is the first question I think most of us ask, because it turns out that he hasn't had very much of a film career, so people who are fans of films might not necessarily know who he is. He has, however, had a pretty promising career since the noughties in television, and so that's been mostly where his career's taken off. Uh, he was been on Third Watch, All My Children. From there, he went on to be in various episodes of Law and Order, CSI New York, ER, Cold Case. He went on to be on the short-lived series Lie to Me, and has had roles in the last couple of years on both Castle and Fringe. And then, obviously, in the last couple of years, as soon as they wanted to make the Jackie Robinson story, they decided to put him in that. And that was what he had to devote himself to for all his purposes. Now, I'm actually kind of glad that they didn't bring this film out during Black History Month, because that tends to be the main problem when it comes to any story about African American heroes. The tendency is always to try and avoid putting it out during African American History Month or Black History Month, however you wish to call it, because it's like, oh, well, this 1 month a year. But actually, I believe that it's currently Women's History Month, and they didn't want Women's History Month to coincide with it, and they didn't want the film perhaps to have too much in line with Black History Month, so they put it out the month after. So I found that kind of cool. Growing up, I was always fine with Black History Month. I ended up actually wanting to learn about Black history in America and the world the rest of the year as well, as part of my just regular study of history. I was always curious about that kind of stuff growing up, and I thought that Jackie Robinson was interesting enough in that it kind of shows how much of a role sports plays in our society as Americans, as Westerners, whereas in other countries, sports don't always play as much of a role. A good example, just our neighbor to the north, Canada. I watched a news broadcast out of Windsor, Ontario, and the sports broadcast, first off, the sportscaster was a woman, which is not something you see too often. Secondly, the sports cast didn't just focus on baseball, basketball, and football. It actually focused on a lot of different sports, the whole myriad of sports. And I think that's largely because so many of Canada's winter pastimes are some of the more popular ones. around the country. Which isn't to say they don't enjoy their summer pastimes as well. Obviously, they're going to enjoy all kinds of different hobbies, sports, and activities, just like we in America do. So, in terms of this film, I think it's good that they finally put out the Jackie Robinson story, but it was already put out in the 1950s, but obviously that's going to be, a different comparison because it actually starred Jackie Robinson. It actually was a very different film. It was still during the time of segregation. Now we're post-segregation. In some areas of the country, I'd say we're even getting towards post-racial in some degree. So I don't know how well they're actually going to play it to real life. That's the big question. That's the question I always raise about any kind of biographical film piece. I guess the 1950 film could be seen as sort of autobiographical, since you actually had the character being played by the real life person. But I think that in this case, it's interesting to see how they interpret it now that Jackie Robinson is gone. I'm actually a big fan of autobiographies in books and film, among other media. I found that Ray was, of course, really good. I liked Red Tails. I liked Walk the Line, and several other films of that genre where it's all based on real life. I actually really enjoy documentaries for much the same reason. And so, my main issue is only that of how real do they play it? How much are they going to play up the racism and the opposition that the guy faced? Because I think it was more a question not so much of the managers, so much as the owners, and in some cases the ticket goers. And I feel that that's largely due to the fact that if you had a black player who was able to outplay a white player or even a whole team, it would have shaken the social order. And so in a sociological context, the whole nature of Jackie Robinson kind of breaking the race barrier on professional sports, it does raise some interesting questions. Now, of course, a large number of athletes are minorities, while a minuscule number of CEOs and other kinds of leaders, politicians, for instance, are in any way minorities. Most of them are still white Protestant males of Anglo-Saxon descent. And so it's gotten less of the Anglo-Saxon descent and more just white males and that kind of thing. But, it becomes a bit of a question. Okay. And now that we've kind of gotten over the elephant in the room, it'll be interesting to see how the whole film plays. It's nice to see Harrison Ford kind of playing up to his age a bit more instead of trying to play, a strong, powerful man. He's just a good man. He's just a good person in the film. So I appreciate that on the part of the filmmakers. You don't always have to make Harrison Ford the leading man, the sex symbol or anything like that. Or the protagonist or anything. He's a wonderful actor. He does some great stuff. But at the same time, that isn't how we got to know him. His part was actually that of a rogue, and that was something that he played into. His later roles were more as agents trying to do the right thing. It wasn't always, just him as him as the leading man. There were other actors that he played off of as part of ensemble casts. So I think in this case they got a really good actor for Chadwick Boseman to kind of play off of. And the director is Brian Helgeland, and I'm going to take a quick look at the stuff that he's done, because I find it interesting to see what the director has done otherwise. He also wrote the script for this, the screenplay. This is taking a minute to load. Here we go. Okay, just gonna click down to a filmography. Alright, so it turns out he's actually written or produced and directed a lot of other films. So that's actually good. That means that hopefully the screenplay's really good. His first film apparently that he got writing credit for was A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, and 976 Evil, Highway to Hell. So those kinds of films that are all kind of in the horror genre. But he also did Assassins, LA Confidential, Conspiracy Theory, which is all good. Then you get to The Postman, Payback, and A Knight's Tale. Nah. Blood Work, okay. Mystic River, alright. The Order, I didn't see that. Man on Fire got some praise. The Bourne Supremacy, he was an uncredited writer on it, so I don't know how quite good to feel about that, but The Bourne Supremacy was not a bad movie. It was a pretty good follow-up to The Bourne Identity, and it was still better than The Bourne Ultimatum, which I kind of lost track of things at a certain point. And then he wrote The Vampire's Assistant, which I didn't see. He wrote the remake of Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. And then he worked on the 2010 version of Robin Hood and the Angelina Jolie film Salt. So, yeah. Most of those are pretty good movies. They're pretty big box office draws. Can't talk. But he's not a great writer, because he has written some films that, and in the case of A Knight's Tale and Payback, he was director on those too. So for directing credits, hopefully he's kind of pulled his ash out of the fire. But in terms of writing credits, he certainly has a certain amount of substantiability, or substance, I guess would be the better term. So he has a certain amount of substance as a screenwriter, and like I said, it'll be interesting to see how this all turns out. So I hope that that anyone out there who goes to see 42 is satisfied with it. I hope that it's a really awesome film, and if it's not, well, there's the 1950 version that you can probably get from the library for nothing, and hopefully that one inspires you even more, because I think that the ultimate test is whether it's an inspiring story for everyone, or if it's just an inspiring story for African Americans. I personally don't feel that an inspiring person of a different ethnicity or race is necessarily just for people of that ethnicity or race. I find those kinds of stories interesting, fascinating, and inspiring, as hopefully we all do. But not everyone does. Sometimes they need the person to be more like them. So, alright. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. Bye-bye.